Welcome back to another one of Mr. Burson's tutorials. This is for Inventor '04, Trim and Arc. Back when we did our initial video, we made a castle using our extrude function. Today what we're going to do is we're going to make the front of a castle, but we are going to use some new tools to help us out. We're going to use the trim tool, we're going to use the arc tool. Most importantly, we're going to learn how to use the dimension tool in some unique ways to get desired outcomes. Let's take a look at how that looks now. The very first thing I'm going to do, as always, is start with a 2D sketch. I'm going to click on my XY plane, since it is, of course, my favorite, and it gives me the front view. What I'm going to start with here are two rectangles, so I'm going to click on the rectangle tool. I'm going to start one of my rectangles in the center like I normally do, and then I'm going to start one of my rectangles over here on the side. I'm going to make sure that I'm starting that rectangle right down here on this line so that the bottom of these two line up. Then I'm going to do something else as well. When I pull this up, I want to see this line appear across from my other rectangle. That means that both of those rectangles are going to maintain the same height, regardless of if I apply a dimension to one or the other. With those two rectangles in place, I'm going to stop using the rectangle tool now, and I'm going to use the line tool now. I'm going to click on the line tool, and I'm going to use my line tool to create a connection between both of these rectangles. The first connection I'm going to create is somewhere up here. I'm going to drag my mouse across until I run into this line right here, and then click while my mouse is on that line. The other line I'm going to make is down here, starting at this bottom corner, and I'm going to drag a line across on the bottom here to connect the bottom two corners of these rectangles. So now we see that we have kind of the front of a castle, but I am not done yet. The next thing that I need to do is I need to use my trim function. So this is the first time that we're seeing the use of the trim function. You should see it up at the top. It is this tiny little button right here, but it's super duper useful. Right now, if I were to stop this sketch and if I were to extrude it, I would have to extrude every single one of these sections equally, right? I'd have to do this square, then this square, then this square. I'd have to extrude each of them separately. I don't want to do that though. I want to make it easier on myself, so I'm going to use the trim tool. What the trim tool does, if we take a look at the little helpful tip here, is if I have a line, if I have two shapes that are crossing over each other, I can get rid of lines in the center of them, and I can make these three rectangles here into one shape. And let's see how I do that. I click on the trim tool, and this is super easy. All I have to do is click on the line that I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of these two lines right here. You see how it turns into a dotted line, whereas the line above it stays as a solid line. If I move my mouse up here, then that line turns into a dotted line, and the line below it stays solid. All I have to do at this point is click. Boom, it's gone. Inventor automatically creates a connection point right here. All I have to do is now come over, trim tool is still activated, click that other line. And there we go, I'm already done. So, I'm going to go ahead and hit escape now to stop using my trim tool. Of course, I want to dimension everything that I have here. So I'm going to hit D on my keyboard to activate the dimension tool. You can also just click on it. And I'm going to make several different dimensions here. I'm going to kind of go fast through this. If you need to pause and check what my dimensions are, I will give you a moment. I'll give you a still frame of what it looks like here at the end. But here we go. I'm going to make this line right here. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to make it 2 inches. So my whole thing gets a lot bigger. So I zoom out. That way I can see the whole thing. I'm going to make this line right here 8 inches. This tiny little line, you see how it became tiny? I'm just going to click on that, and I'm going to make this 2 inches as well. As a reminder, by the way, I'm going to undo this real quick. I have had this happen before where, say that I made this 10 inches instead. Oh no! Right? My castle doesn't look right anymore. Remember that you can always click and drag a line in order to fix something before you dimension it. But that's not exactly what I want. I want this to be at 8 inches, and then I want this line up here to be at 2 inches. Taking a look over everything, this looks good so far, but I still see those blue lines, which means that tells me that I haven't dimensioned everything, and I haven't defined how tall I want my castle. So I'm going to click on this line right here. I'm going to say that I want the castle 8 inches tall on the sides, and then this little line right here, I'm going to make this 2 inches. And notice how this one matched up with the other side. That helps. That happened earlier because I made sure that those two little lines that were coming across, they were there when I made those two rectangles. So pausing here for just a moment. if you need to see all these dimensions, but this is the basic shape that I want you to make. Remember, we got this shape by using 2 rectangles and 2 lines, and then we use the trim tool to get rid of those lines. Let's go ahead and finish up my sketch. I'm going to hit my home button so that I see the whole thing. I'm going to click extrude. That way I can bring this out. And then yours will probably say 1 inch. I want this to come out to 2 inches. I was working on this earlier, so it's already coming out to 2 inches for me. And then I hit OK. All right. That castle front looks great, but what good is a castle front without a wonderful door in the center? So let's click on the front of my castle. Let's start another sketch. We're going to start with a rectangle this time. Doesn't matter where we place this rectangle as long as we use this bottom line down here again. I'm going to place it about right here. And then I'm going to use my arc tool in order to make an arc that goes across the top of this, okay? So, arc from here, and let's go over that arc tool again real fast, all right? So, the arc tool is another tool that we are introducing right now. That arc tool, the way that it works, and you want to make sure that it is on 3-point arc and not tangent or center point. 3-point arc, okay? I'm going to click on one corner of my rectangle. You can then see that I'm kind of making this dotted straight line, so that looks a little weird right now. But I'm going to click on the other corner of my rectangle, and now we see that the arc comes out. This third point is defining where that top of the arc is, all right? And what I want to do is, you can see as I pull this up and closer and closer and closer, you see that I get these 2 little symbols that are appearing on the sides here. Take a look at those again, right? That little sign looks like a circle with a line next to it. That means that this arc is tangent with these 2 lines down here. And that is exactly what I want. In general, what it means for you making the door, it just means that your door is going to look nice and even. Those lines are going to come up, and then that arc is going to make a nice smooth curve at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and that's going to be the end of it. But no door has a line right here, right? I wonder what tool I could use to get rid of that line. Go ahead and click on your trim tool, and then go ahead and click on that line right there. Boom, that line is gone. Now we have one complete door. But no door is complete without, of course, dimensioning it. This door has got to be a lot smaller than what it currently is, so let's dimension from here to here first. Click this line, define the dimensions in between. Let's bring that down to 1 inch. Let's then bring the height of my door, so I'll click on this line right here. We'll say that this is 1.5 inches. There we go. And then my arc is good as it is. I'm happy with that. The only thing left that I really need to define is where the door is. So I'm going to click on this line over here and this line right here. And we'll say that that will be, if I made the whole thing, 12 inches across, because I know it's 2, 2, and 8. That makes 12. I know that this door is 1 inch. So I believe 6 inches. Is that right? Nope, that looks a little bit off center. Let's do 5 instead. That also looks off center. So, hey, we get there in the end. 5.5 inches. That puts us right there in the center. There my door is. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and finish this sketch. I'm going to hit extrude. Of course, I don't want my door to come out. That's not really much of a door then. So instead, I can do one of 2 things. I can click on my direction, change the direction of it, and do flipped. Or I can also go down here to this portion called output and go to my Boolean area, and instead of doing a join operation, I can do a cut operation. And you can see that it's currently facing out this way, so maybe I'll just hit the flip anyway. And then I hit OK. And there we go. I have a door going through the bottom of my castle. But no castle is complete without defenses. And we're going to do something that a classic castle wall would have on it, which is called an arrow slit. An arrow slit is something where a defender, someone with a bow and arrow, would actually be able to peer through. And it's very hard to shoot the archer through this arrow slit, but it's very easy for the archer to draw their bow back and then shoot people outside of the castle in order to take them down as they're defending their 13th century farm or whatever. Anyway, so I click on the front of my castle. I'm going to click Start 2D Sketch. Now there's a lot of steps here, but all of this is to show you how we can use the trim tool and the dimension tool in very unique ways. So the very first thing I'm going to start with is a thin rectangle. I'm going to start with a thin rectangle right here, and then I'm going to use my line tool to make a triangle. Now let's take a look at how this triangle is going to look, okay? This triangle is going to look kind of cruddy to start with. The one thing I am going to do, notice that there's this little dotted line coming up from the center of this line right here, from the center right here. I do want this first line, starting it down here, bringing it up here, I want that first line to be lined up with the center. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to come down here. I want to make sure that these two are lined up like this. Click, and then I'm going to complete my triangle right here. Now, these are all the shapes that we need. Everything else that we're going to do, we're going to start using the dimension tool, all right? Because I want this to be precise. The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click between these two lines. That is not going to create a dimension that we've seen before, where it's just a straight distance. Now I'm going to be making an angular dimension. So I click between both of those lines. It's currently sitting at 52 degrees. I want to make that 60, and I want to make the angle between both of these lines 60 as well. There we go. Now I'm going to do something else as well. So I'm going to come up here to the top of my rectangle, and I'm going to define how big this should be. I want it to be 0.2 inches, all right? Now that I have made that definition up here, I know that half of this, right, is 0.1 inch. I'm also going to define how big the triangle is down here. I'm going to say that it's 0.5 inches, so half an inch. Now that I have all of these dimensions in place, I can make sure that this triangle is lined up exactly with the center of everything that I have just made. I'm going to click on this dot right here, that corner of my rectangle. I'm going to click on the center of this line over here. Now you will notice that initially I don't have any dimensions. What Inventor is waiting for me to do is it wants me to drag my mouse off to the side over here, or it wants me to drag my mouse below right here, because it needs to understand what kind of dimension that I want. All right? So I'm going to click down here, and I'm going to define this at 0.25 because I know that this whole thing is 0.5, and I know center to center, it's going to be 0.25. All right, so half of this distance right here, half of this distance is 0.25 inches. All right, we're almost there. I promise we're almost there. Okay, so one of the very last things that I'm going to do is use my trim tool, really. I am not too worried about this distance right here. Let's go ahead and define it anyway. We'll do from the bottom of the rectangle here to the top up here, and I'll explain why in just a moment. So this currently says 1.79. Let's just make this an even 1.8, and there I'm happy with it, okay? Now I'm going to explain why I did that here. Take a look at what I'm going to do now. I'm going to use my trim tool, and I'm going to get rid of all of these lines in the center. I'm going to just start clicking on these lines. That way they all go away. And there we have it. Now I have one shape. It is not this mess of a couple different shapes there. I have one shape that I'm going to extrude. I'm going to use my dimension tool a couple more times just to define a couple last things that we didn't do before. I'm going to define how big I want this line. We'll say that we want this exactly 1.5. Whoop! I see that we did a little bit of a mess up here. It changed things around a little bit, so I'm going to hit Control Z. We're going to just leave that dimension the way that it is. I'm going to click between this line. Oh, my dimension tool is not selected. Let's go ahead and hit that. Click between this line and this line. I'm going to define this at 0.9. And then last but not least, I'm going to click up here between here and here. And I'm going to find this at 0.25. There we go. I have made my arrow slit. It is fully dimensioned. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Finish Sketch. The very last thing that I need to do is extrude that arrow slit. Of course, I want to go the other way because I want to cut through my castle. And there we have it. That is the trim tool in a lot of different words. And then we also saw the arc tool as well. For your assignment, I'd like to just see a couple extra features on this castle where you add on a couple other things and make it your castle. Put on some more detail than what you see here, and you'll be good to go. Have a good day.